chapter 6 and 7 today, but before we do that, I want to talk about the our mock counseling sessions that we're going to be doing in the last 5 weeks of class. The only way that we can do this is to counsel each other, and I don't want you to counsel an actual person because you're not licensed, certainly, and it could cause problems. So what we're going to do, each student is going to create a mock character that they will pretend to be while they're being counseled. And here is the character history form. This is the assignments page of your class, and this is the history form. It's right here. I have an apple. I don't know what you have. Okay, this is what it looks like. You need to make up a fictional name for this individual. Try not to use a name from the class. They can have any problem that you want. The problem that they need to have is a problem that you have never had in the past, that you certainly don't have now, that you're not close to. And the reason is because if you've had this problem in the past and you start acting like that individual, start acting like you used to act when you had that problem, then potentially it will cause a relapse. In other words, you'll go back into that character. You'll become who you were before. And of course, we certainly don't want that. And it's the same way with if you're too close to a problem. You have an aunt that you're very close to that has panic attacks. Because you are so close to your aunt, potentially you'll start identifying with her panic attacks, and you could actually develop panic attacks from acting like you're somebody with panic attacks. Okay, let me show you what I will do. What we're going to do. So you create your character and you send it to me, or you put it in the Dropbox. Actually, there is a Dropbox, isn't there? Yes, there is a Dropbox for the character histories. Put it in the Dropbox, and I will take it, and I will put it on the discussion page. Wait a second. First of all, I need to go back to this. Oops, I got two of them now. Okay, let me save this. Yeah. Save. Okay, that's fine. There we go. Okay, and this is what I will do. Okay, we'll get rid of that. Go to the discussion page, and at the bottom. Okay, so at the bottom of the discussion page, I'll put this at the bottom of the discussion page. Okay, so I need to test, and then I will. That's IW, isn't it? That's it right there. Open, and then submit. And now it is at the bottom of the, there you go. It's right here. So when you have done your counseling, and of course your client's name is at the bottom, just like it will be when you are working. You'll have access to their files, and what you'll have to do is you will have to put your counsel notes on the file so that the next person that comes along, if it's not you, of course, you're going to remember this client. You're going to remember all these things about them. Of course, it's always good to review your counsel notes. So what you'll do is you'll put your counsel notes underneath that client, and I can't do it on mine, but you will be able to do that, and that's the way it's going to work. And there will be a whole list of individuals, because we'll all get your histories in, and they'll be here, and so you will make contact with that individual, cell phone, Zoom, Skype, Duo. Facebook has something that works that way. I've never used it, and you can talk to these individuals as that individual, and then put your counseling notes right here, and then you'll get credit for it. And you need to do 10 of them, and you have 5 weeks, so that gives you, you'll have to do about 2 a week in order to get them all in. Anyway, and the counseling sessions should last somewhere between 35 and 45 minutes. So there you go. That's all that needs to happen. Let me get rid of this before everybody gets confused. There we go. Okay. Okay, that's it. So let's go ahead and get started. Get your histories in as soon as you can. Make up some interesting names and some interesting problems. There's a lot of, I mean, it's anything in Psych 241. As a matter of fact, I think Dr. Russ is doing these mock counseling sessions also. So if you're taking 241 right now, there you go. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. Get rid of this, and we'll put this right here. Oops. There's 6. That's the one we're on first. So let's go ahead and get started. Come on, there we go. Okay, Chapter 6, Basic Interpersonal Skills. And there's Professor Einstein's going to give us all the word. And there he is wearing his bell-bottom trousers and his bow tie. As we learned previously, a good counselor displays warmth, empathy, respect, and genuineness. And the best counselors are the ones that people trust. Why do they trust them? Because they're warm, they're empathetic, they show them respect, and they are genuine. This is the real person that they are. Additionally, a good professional must accurately observe, effectively attend, and actively listen. And this is not the easiest thing in the world. But it's just like you're listening to your best friend. Whenever you're listening to your best friend, you're focused on them, you're leaning toward them, you're paying attention, total attention to them. Observing means noticing all behaviors that accompany communication. This type of communication is known as nonverbal communication. You need to notice their facial expressions, their breathing patterns like sighing, gestures that they have, movements, and their posture. Being a good observer increases understanding of what clients are communicating. It can supplement what your client is telling you verbally. It may verify what is being said, or it may contradict it. And of course, this is what you're really looking for. You're looking for the fact. And normally when you talk to somebody and they say the way that they're acting, you go, it verifies it, and you don't even think about it. But when they contradict, if their actions are they're smiling when they're saying something sad, that tells you you're acting like this is really upsetting you, but you've got a smile on your face. That contradiction tells you they're really not that upset about what's going on. If a practitioner gets conflicting messages, the nonverbal meaning is usually closer to the actual meaning. And it's easy to lie out of your mouth, but it's almost impossible to lie with your face. Practitioners often comment on contradictions, and of course, that is what you need to do. And these are some of the nonverbal communications. Yeah, he's got that smirk on his face. He thinks you're stupid. He wants to leave, and that's why he's got his hands in his pockets. She's interested. Anytime people are trying to protect their bodies, like she is, she's got her hands on her hips. This guy's got his arms crossed. She's got her arms crossed. This means that they're trying to protect themselves. It's just the way it works. I'm not sure why this means he's closed-minded. But yeah, he's got his arms crossed, and that is in case you attack his face or his chest, he can lift his arms up and protect himself. He's looking sideways at you. That means he doesn't really trust you. He's only looking at you with one eye. He's looking away from you. Yeah, and so he's trying to show you how big his shoulders are. That's why they call this a hostile attitude. Not sure what this. I don't see that as closed-minded. If he's got his arm pointed or his legs pointed towards you, one of his legs pointed towards you, that's a means that he may potentially be trying to attack you, or not. He is trying to protect himself by showing you that he is can be aggressive, will be aggressive because he's got his foot aimed toward you. He's got his sunglasses on. That means you can't see his eyes, and that's how especially in Japan, that's how you read people's emotions. This lady's lying. How do we know that? Two things. One, she's got her hand on her face, and the other is that she's looking to the side. And of course, anytime you've got things crossed, just like he is, he's not really listening to what you say. This is him being hostile. Anytime things are crossed, that means that they are closed and they're not open for communication. Good observers pay special attention to facial expressions. Facial expressions can show any emotion. If the client shows no emotion, known as a flat affect, it indicates depression. And this is the individual that tried to assassinate Ronald Reagan. He was in a mental hospital, St. Elizabeth's in Washington, D.C. for an extended length of time. And he's got, that's what the flat affect looks like. So if it, you've never seen a decapitated head, but that's kind of the expression on a decapitated head. None. Other indicators of depression include little body movement, slump posture. Mere sadness, on the other hand, is much more animated. If they are actually crying or making noise or looking down, if there's an increase in the amount of fluid in the person's eyes, it means that they're sad. Doesn't mean that she's got a pretty good flat affect going, but the fact that she's crying and she's making noise at the same time, nothing's coming out of this guy. He certainly doesn't have enough emotion to even get tears in his eyes. That's depression, and that's sadness. Stress is expressed by muscle tension, movement, shallow breathing. Looking away may indicate thinking, remembering, or hesitant about talking. They will also look away when they lie. It's really hard for people to look you directly in the eye and lie to you. They will usually look away or turn their head. Clenched fists must be interpreted by the context of the situation and may indicate stress, frustration, anger, anxiety. The counselor must remember the gestures are culturally developed, and so it is imperative that you understand the facial gestures, the movements of people in a specific culture. And I can tell you, living in 13 different states and 3 different countries, that they're not the same. Just because people are human doesn't mean that they're going to have the same gestures. It's kind of interesting. I was living in Germany, and we were right on the French border. So the French and the Germans are very, very different. The Germans are very closed. They wear dark clothes. It's almost like they're trying to camouflage themselves. Everything's gray and black, and that interesting color of green that soldiers wear. We always called it olive drab, which is what they called it during World War II. But yeah, everything is really strange colors. Then you go across the border, you go into France, and everything is yellow and red and bright blue, and it's just really very, very different. And the French like to get close to you when they talk, and Germans don't. Germans, if they talk to you at all, it's from across the room. But the Frenchman, if he wants to talk to you, he gets right into your face. And sometimes he's talking loud, but he's talking loud happy. I mean, if he gets, uh, yeah. Anyway, it's a lot different. And we're talking miles here, but yeah, the Germans are kind of interesting people. And so are the French. When someone experiences strong emotions, their skin tone may change color, darkening, or becoming rosier than usual. Skin tone change usually starts at the chest and moves up the face. So if somebody's embarrassed, that's what you'll first see it in their neck, probably, especially if they have their chest covered. You can't see their chest, but it has to do with your heart, and it's pumping blood, and it starts right there in your chest and moves up your neck into your cheeks. So you can actually watch their face flush. Facial expressions, what emotion do they seem to be displaying? Do they have tears in their eyes? Is the mouth turned up or down? Is the brow wrinkled? Are there circles under their eyes? Are they smiling? Eye movement and eye contact, are they looking mostly to the floor? Are they looking mostly at the ceiling? Are they looking around the room? Are they looking directly at another person? Are they staring? Body position, are they sitting? Are they leaning back, slumped over, slouched, upright and stiff? Legs crossed, feet flat on the floor, legs curled under, legs crossed, ankles crossed. You might be wondering how I'm sitting right now. I've got my left leg tucked underneath my right leg. For some reason, when I sit in front of the computer, I put one leg up and I have one leg on the ground. I have no idea. I just feel comfortable that way. Body movement, did they hardly move at all? Did they move slightly? Did they fidget most of the time? Did they nod their head or swing their legs? Did their movement change during the interchange? Are they nervous? Are they flipping their pencil like this guy? Breath pattern, did they breathe? Did their breathing seem normal? Did they often sigh? Did they take deep breaths? Did they breathe in a shallow way? Muscle tone, are their fists clenched? Is their jaw tightly closed? Are they slumping? Is their face slack? Has their muscle tone changed during the interchange? Gestures, what were they doing with their hands? Did their hands stay in their lap folded together? Were their hands moving around most of the time? Were their hands in tight fists? Did they make circles with their arms or hands? Did they show their palms? If you show somebody your palms, it means you're trying to show them that you're not aggressive. Skin tone. Did you notice any change in skin tone? When in a group therapy situation, it is important that the practitioner observe everyone in the group. They should not only observe the individual speaking, but how the members of the group are reacting to what the speaker is saying. When the practitioner scans the group, it also encourages the speaker to speak to everyone, not just the practitioner. Often in a group situation, there will be two leaders, and the two can trade off assignments of observation. It is necessary to observe the people in large groups. This can be done by looking for telltale actions of individuals or groups of individuals. Fidgeting, facial expression incongruence, shoulders hunched, mouth pinched, eyes closed. That means they're sleeping. I saw that a lot while I was lecturing. I like to do this online because I don't have to watch you guys taking a snooze or checking your iPhones, your cell phones, your smartphones, listening to all that dinging that goes on. Ding, ding, ding. You got a message, a massage. Attending involves being able to focus, being focused on the client. You need to be totally focused on your client. Well, just like you're talking to somebody that is the most important person to you at that moment. like the way that you talk to your parents, or like the way that you talk to your best friend, or the way that you talk to your significant other. You need to make eye contact. You need to be move forward. It's a well, it's not a trick. If you really care about people, this is the way you listen to everybody. But I've gotten into trouble like this. Well, not real trouble, but sometimes I'll be in in a line, and it's really silly for all these people to be standing, within inches of each other, and nobody's saying anything. So sometimes I'll start talking to somebody behind me or in front of me, and we get into these long, drawn-out conversations, which, doesn't need to happen, I guess. They need to go, you need to go. What's going on here? Attending isn't as easy as it seems. Often, when we are listening to someone, we're hearing what they are saying, but we are trying to compose what we are going to say when it is our turn to speak. This is incorrect. You need to be hearing everything that they're saying, not trying to figure out how to make yourself look good. While there are some cultural differences in the way that someone shows attending, for the most part, it is shown by leaning slightly forward in a relaxed, comfortable position, sitting in an open and accessible way. Face expresses appropriate concern. Facial expressions are extremely important. The facial expression should be congruent to what the client is relating and experiencing. For most people, this comes naturally, but some are taught to smile or laugh at adversity. And if you study children, children will do this with their caregivers, even if they don't, even when they're tiny. Even newborns will mimic the people that they're looking at. And this is really what we need to do in order to get people to talk to us. We need to make sure that our facial expressions are similar to theirs, and this is why it's so difficult. I don't know if you've ever talked to somebody who is suffering from schizophrenia, but people who are suffering from schizophrenia very often will have facial expressions that don't match what they're talking about or what they're saying or what they're telling you that they feel. And it gets it's really difficult because what you need to react to is not the way they look, but what they're saying. And sometimes what they're saying is word salad. I mean, it's just some words thrown together. But and that gets really tough. Really interesting talking to somebody who's schizophrenic, especially if they've got a fidget going. They'll have tics where they'll be doing things with their hands. And the only way that they can talk is to take up their brains are spinning all the time. And one of the things that is going on is they need to arrest part of their brain, and they do that by fidgeting, and that by doing the same thing over and over and over again. And a lot of times, what will happen is as you are talking to them, that's not enough. So they'll have to change it. They'll have to change their movement or what's happening, and that's well, it's very difficult. Their brains aren't stuck together the way that a normal brain is. It's it's put together incorrectly, and so they're getting mixed signals going on. And the question is, which signal do you respond to? I know I'm making it sound tough, but and it is tough. Um, it gets kind of interesting. I had a friend who was that's all he did all day was counsel. He was trying to his job was counseling people that were suffering from schizophrenia, and on a normal day, everybody's fine because they're all under medication. But sometimes people would go into crisis or they'd have a psychotic episode, and he had to deal with that as well. So it was really kind of interesting talking to him because his facial expression mirrored somebody who was schizophrenic, and when you were talking to him, he would try to he would be trying to pick out what facial expression or what hand movement or what words you were saying. He wasn't used to words that made sense. It was kind of interesting. But to be around him was kind of like being around somebody that was schizophrenic, because he was trying to find that specific thing that is really going on in their mind, and it's not always obvious. Anyway, facial expressions. Maintaining regular eye contact is another way that you can show that you are paying attention. People from Asia and those from Northern Europe tend to prefer a more peripheral gaze, finding the direct stare too intense. And this is, of course, Emma Stone. She just made a movie about, well, it's about a Frankenstein woman, I think. Somebody's brought back to life. Or is it they put in somebody else's brain in her, a baby's brain or something. I don't remember. Anyway, she's in a new movie. Any distracting behavior, including taking notes, should be avoided as it distracts from the process. They may see fidgety movements on your part as disinterest, impatience, or boredom. And that's what boredom looks like. That's a bored face. Left-handed lady with a purple pen, about ready to write something down, but there's nothing to write down. Another way to communicate involvement is through minimal encouragement. Minimal encouragement involves repeating one or two words a person says, nodding, saying something in the affirmative like uh-huh, and I do that a lot. And of course, that gets, like I said, it gets me in trouble if I'm standing in line at Walmart. Listening involves fully focusing on what the other person is trying to communicate. Listening actually goes beyond attending. Most of us are composing in our own minds as others talk to us, but listening is total absorption in what the client is saying. Just like Pee Wee Herman, Paul Rubens, who died a couple months ago. Listening isn't just hearing the words, but conveying the understanding of the implications of what the client is saying. While listening, the practitioner uses minimal encouragement to get the client to continue disclosing, and that would work. Listening involves noticing the client's communication style, including their tone, their volume, the speed of delivery, noticing pauses, silence, changes in patterns of speech. Communication styles vary by culture and between families. Direct, clear, easy to understand. Some use jargon or colloquialisms, narrative style, confused circular manner, jump from one topic to another. They do not complete their thoughts. I'm listening to a book right now, and there's a lot of colloquialisms. It's a book about an individual from Western Virginia. And he uses a lot of slang terms, it's just fascinating to me. Of course, I grew up with this kind of stuff. Being from Indiana, we used to get a lot of people migrating from that area of the Appalachia, the Appalachian area, to work in the factories up in our area. We were inundated we had factories all over the place. So you get a lot of people, and we learned all of these colloquialisms. And sometimes they're not easy to understand. Communication can, I used to have a friend from Georgia, and she would call people turkey butts. Turkey butt. I'm not exactly sure what that is. It seemed a term of endearment, but I'm not exactly sure. Communication can only take place if you allow the client proper time to express their thoughts and feelings. Silence is good for the client as it allows them to garner their thoughts. Many practitioners are uncomfortable with silence and want to fill it with their own voice. And I've told you the story of, I think I've told you the story. I told somebody this story that's near they and then this is not funny, of course, but they had a cluster of suicides at a Catholic school, Bryan High School in Omaha, and it was the APA decided that they needed to help. Um, there weren't enough. There were tons of hospital beds in Omaha, but there was very little mental health uh, areas, and so they were kind of at a loss. And the suicides just kept happening. This is over a 2 or 3 week period. They had like 17, five successes and 12 attempts. Anyway, so they decided that they were going to send a team in. And the team that came in, the only one that was available was one from New York City. And of course, if you've ever been to Omaha, around Omaha is all farm country. Most of the kids at Bryan High School were farm kids. They were Catholic. Most of the counselors coming in were Jewish. From New York City, they didn't even see grass, let alone farmland. And these and they couldn't even talk to each other, as weird as that is. And the biggest problem they had, people in New York City are loud, and people in New York City, they're constantly talking. And if one person isn't talking, the other person has to be talking. And it was the silence that was the hardest part. They would get into counseling sessions with these Jewish psychiatrists from New York City, and the psychiatrists were the only ones doing any talking. And eventually, of course, the parents and whatnot got up in arms about the fact that they weren't helping. As a matter of fact, all they were doing was helping themselves, and that was actually what stopped the suicides. Was not the fact that their counseling was doing any good. It was the fact that everybody came together to get rid of them. As funny as that is, but it worked. Suicide stopped. Even when practitioners are fully focused on listening, they may misinterpret the client's words. A client may use emotional words differently because of cultural or familial imperatives. Interpretation must be explained by the client. And that's what you want anyway. The client needs to understand what they are saying. You want the client to fix themselves. If all the good ideas come from you, that means none of the good ideas are coming from them. And which ideas are going to stick in their head? Your ideas or their ideas? Oh, their ideas are already there. What the client says affects the practitioner. It is important for practitioners to listen to their own responses as a way of further understanding what the client is saying. If a client is speaking in a monotone about something very sad and the practitioner does not experience any personal response to this, it is important to determine whether the client is allowing himself or herself to feel the feeling or the practitioner is detached. Warmth is expressed through demeanor, concern, acceptance, tone of voice, posture, listening carefully. Touch can be a way of expressing warmth when used appropriately. Be careful. I tapped somebody on the shoulder yesterday. We were joking with each other, and I tapped him on the shoulder. Now this is Iowa. Iowa's a lot like Indiana. People don't touch each other, and if you do, you better make sure that it's appropriate. But I've talked to this guy before. I think we're okay. The appropriate expression of warmth can depend on many diversity issues. Gender influences how warmth is expressed. Particularly, this is influenced by various religious or spiritual beliefs. Racial and ethnic differences in cultural norms influence the expression of warmth. The power differential between different people confuse how expressions of warmth are interpreted between a child and an adult, a doctor and a patient, or a person with perceived economic power with one who does not have this. Expressions must be genuine. Due to the way the brain functions and thousands of years of history, individuals are quickly able to pick up warmth that is not genuine. It is important for the practitioner to observe the client's response as a way of judging how warmth was experienced. This is a sad, sad story, and I hate to tell you guys this, but I had two children, and my wife left. And so she got visitation rights, which was fine. I think it's really important that the kids keep contact with their biological sire, with their mother. But she was kind of a strange duck. After all of this took place, I always asked myself, man, you must have been the dumbest person in the world to make babies with that lady. Anyway, so she would see the kids, and she'd make them give her a kiss before she left. She would always make them give her a kiss, and pretty quickly the kids didn't. They kind of pulled back from it, and the reason was because it was just so totally superficial. It wasn't genuine, and they knew that, and they could feel that. And even though I'm not a kisser, uh, they would want to be around me rather than her, because I'm more genuine and she was not. And it was I found it really interesting that these my son was what, 2 or 3 years old, and he would wind himself around my leg, and he wouldn't he she'd have to come over and give him a kiss. She would give him a kiss, but he wouldn't give her one. And my daughter was kind of the same way. She'd hug her mother, but she wouldn't give her a kiss. They knew. They figured it out. Mom was not real. There wasn't a whole lot of warmth going on. And then one day she just stopped communicating. And they didn't seem to miss it a whole lot. By that time, I was married to somebody else. And they were getting enough attention and affection from their stepmother, and everything was better because it was real. It was genuine. Level one, a warmth evaluation scale. Level one, the practitioner communicated little or no concern for the client and appeared cold, detached, stiff, and or mechanical. Level three, at least half the time, the practitioner verbally and non-verbally communicated concern and caring appropriate to the unique needs of the client. Level five, the practitioner's facial expression and posture consistently communicated concern and caring appropriate to the unique needs of the client. Okay, this is kind of an interesting movie. There's not a whole lot of dialogue in The Meetings of Anna. It's a French movie. Actually, she's Belgian, but she's Walloon, so she speaks French, and she is trying to get people to. She made a movie, and she's trying to get people to show the movie. Is what she's trying to do. And so we first see her, but throughout the movie we find out she has old lovers that she's going to go see. She is trying to decide whether she's going to stay with her husband or go with her new love. She hasn't decided yet, and so we see all this mostly in her facial expressions. She's trying to decide what to do. It's really a fascinating movie. Of course, it's all dubbed. She also talks to her mother, and she's kind of estranged from her mother because her mother would compete with her for her beauty and for her outgoingness, and they were always in competition. And it wasn't a happy reunion with her mother. And in the end, there she is. She decides what she's going to do. And if you wonder what she's going to do, she goes with her new lover. it turns out to be a woman, and all of her old lovers were men. Anyway, there you go. The meaning of Anna. Facial expressions. Okay, let's tackle chapter 7, preparing for a client and ending a session. Ooh, that's scary. The practitioner must get ready to meet with clients. They must gather referral information. They must gather the forms. They must gather whatever needed supplies they might use. Purpose or agenda for the meeting is clarified. They should make notes. My wife's a big list maker. I never write anything down or take pictures. I'm not a picture taker. The practitioner must consider the client's needs in the physical arrangement of the building, the waiting room, the meeting room. If the client has any physical limitations, then the practitioner must make appropriate alterations. The client's culture should be considered to ensure that all appropriate steps are taken to make the sessions as beneficial as possible. If the practitioner does not have a working knowledge of the client's culture, then it is appropriate to research the culture with the understanding that such writing is often stereotyped and inaccurate. Or it may be dated. The practitioner needs to understand how the client may feel about the first meeting, embarrassed, hesitant, uncomfortable. The practitioner must put away all distracting thoughts so that they can concentrate on the needs of the client. Beginning the first meeting appropriately is essential to the client-practitioner relationship. First impressions have lasting effects on future interactions. The greeting is essential to connecting with them. Ground rules need to be clarified. Purpose of the meeting, length of the meeting, any special considerations that need to be addressed. When greeting the client, be aware of loudness of your voice, eye contact that you make, how you address them. Issues of privacy and confidentiality are important in how and first you meet your client. If you must identify a person in a waiting room and cannot guess who your client might be, you can say very quietly, "I am Jesse Melendez. Are you Ms. Chen?" Now remember, Ms. Chen may be a lady who's not of Asian extraction, and she may be married to somebody named Ms. Chen. So don't assume, because you'll get burned just about every time. If a receptionist is able to identify your client, you can just identify yourself to your client. Be aware that many clients experience some shame in seeking help, so confidentiality is very important. The practitioner should invite the client to introduce themselves. The practitioner should determine how the client wants to be addressed. Some people don't like to use their first names. Using a last name in any circumstance shows respect. But don't call them just by their last name. Where I come from, and in my era, if you called somebody by just their last name, it meant that you wanted to fight. So, that's a possibility. That was Indiana. I don't know. I don't know how it is in Arizona and New Mexico, but if you call somebody by their last name, you better be ready to square off. People tend to feel more comfortable with, and this is kind of interesting. If you're talking to somebody that is young, then you need to get down on as close to their level as you possibly can. Sometimes this can be painful, especially if you're an old man like me, and your back's starting to creak. But getting down into their face is rare, because normally adults will talk over them, and the lower you are to them, the closer you are to them, the more successful you're going to be. I had a colleague who worked with children in Yuma. Actually, she's a psychologist in Yuma, and she's she's only 4'8". She's a tiny little thing, but very, very successful child psychologist, and it's mainly because she's right down there at their own level. it works. So if you are a tall person, bend over and show that you can communicate with them on their level. People tend to feel more comfortable with professionals who fully explain the process, what they're going to do, what will be expected of each person participating, the purpose of the meeting, and limits of confidentiality. When beginning meetings with children and adolescents, explanations will need to be made that they can understand. Special issues of confidentiality will need to be covered. Education about your role is important, as well as what you expect of them. How you will include their parents or caretakers also needs to be made clear. First meetings with groups and families, be sure that members of the group are acquainted with each other. Clarify ground rules for talking. Explain what the role of participants will be. In families, you may want to ask how the members want the family to be different. Confidentiality needs to be discussed and an agreement reached about how information will be shared outside the group or family. For subsequent sessions, some practitioners like to start their sessions by allowing the clients to initiate the conversation, thus setting the direction of the meeting. They may say, "Where would you like to start? Let's begin by discussing the progress you have made since our last meeting." Confidentiality is one of the most important elements to address at the beginning of the first meeting. You need to assure the clients that information shared with you will be kept confidential, secure, not shared with others unless they sign a consent form. One of the hardest areas of the clients to understand is mandated reporting of possible harm to self or others, suspected child abuse and neglect, elder abuse. Begin your discussion of confidentiality by covering the legal limits of your state. And every state has different rules, so be careful. I know you guys are right there on the Navajo Nation, which encompasses 3 different states, but if somebody's up in Utah, the laws in Utah aren't the same as they are in New Mexico. Explain the boundaries of confidentiality. Most agencies will have a statement of confidentiality and informed consent that clients must sign during their first appointment. If a client is mandated by the court to see the practitioner is required to report back to the court. If the client is considered a minor, the parents or guardians usually have the legal right to know what happens in a session. Each state has their own laws regarding sharing information with parents. Many practitioners will only disclose information if the child's behavior is a threat to themselves or to others. Possible problems the minor could disclose: being sexually promiscuous, using drugs excessively, threatening to run away, having been abused or neglected, feeling suicidal, and feeling homicidal. Groups create additional issues in confidentiality. Confidentiality must be discussed during the first meeting. Most practitioners recommend that the group members agree not to discuss information covered in the meeting outside the group or with anyone in the group after the meeting has ended. Many organizations require administrative contracts, which may include detailed descriptions of the nature and limits of confidentiality, explanation of when disclosure is required by law, what to do in case of emergencies, payment terms, confidentiality of records and email communications, rights of clients to review records, telephone and emergency procedures, cancellation policy, information about the practitioner's qualifications, training, education, and licensure. Other information that the client needs: payment, emergencies, telephone or email contact, how contact between sessions will be handled, cancellation policies, and length of meetings. The closing of a session is just as important as the opening minutes. The practitioner may want to discuss possibility of future meetings, what has been covered in the session, and request feedback. Ask a client what has been helpful, support the client's courage. Keep in mind that the different cultures have different expectations. Closing statements that you might use. How would you like to end today? We have 10 minutes left today. This seems like a good place to stop today. We've talked about some important things today. Although we need to end for now, it seems like it might be helpful to continue our discussion next time. We have 15 minutes left. Do you have any closing thoughts about our meeting today? Let's talk about what we have accomplished today. What did you find most helpful in our work today? I would recommend that we meet weekly for the next 4 weeks and then evaluate our progress. Does that plan sound okay to you? We are about out of time and have covered most of the points on our agenda. I think this is a good point to end. Shall we meet again next week at the same time? Ta-da! There's a trick some people use. They use your name over and over again. So they put your name in every sentence that they say. That's probably not a good idea. It gets a little monotonous. Just like using today over and over and over again sounded monotonous to me. So I'll talk to you guys next week.